You ever walk into a moment and just know you're being told exactly where you stand without anyone saying a word? That was me the day of my son's wedding. I showed up early like you do when you've helped coordinate half the thing and paid for more than that. I'd been at that venue through the planning, through the renovations, through the drama. But I was excited. This was supposed to be a good day. Family. Celebration. Two people in love. A new chapter. And then someone I don't even remember who, maybe it was the wedding planner's assistant, comes up to me and says, "We've got your seat ready." Now I'm thinking I'll be somewhere near the front. Not front row, I'm not trying to steal the spotlight from anyone, but at least in the main room, where you can see the ceremony, where you can feel like you're part of something. They take me around the side of the house, through a door that sticks a little, and I find myself standing in a garage. There's a folding chair with my name on it, no joke, and a tiny table with a cup of lemonade. And I just stand there, like, is this a holding area? Is this where we're waiting before we go into the main event? But no, this is the seat. The ceremony starts, and I realize they're not coming to get me. The music starts. People are clapping, laughing. The photographer's doing the rounds. And I'm in a room with a box fan and a pile of extra centerpieces. That moment was louder than any toast or speech anyone gave that day. Because what it said to me was, you're not really part of this. You don't matter enough to be seen. And I'm going to tell you something that maybe you've felt but never had the words for. When people show you where they think you belong, believe them. But also, decide if you're going to stay there. Now, was it intentional? I don't know. Maybe it was a logistical thing. Maybe someone didn't think it through. Maybe the seating chart got messed up. But here's the thing, when someone values you, they check. They make sure you're seen. They care about how you feel. They don't stick you next to a lawnmower and call it love. I sat in that chair for a few minutes, trying to be gracious, trying to breathe through it, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But then I realized I was doing what so many of us do. We rationalize being disrespected because we don't want to be too sensitive. We excuse other people's choices because we don't want to cause a scene. We make ourselves small, even when we've built the damn room. And that's what hit me hardest. I'd built this place. I'd invested in it, literally and emotionally. I'd been there from the beginning, through late-night calls and budget meetings and walkthroughs. This wasn't just a venue. It was a reflection of everything I'd worked for. And in one afternoon, I was made to feel like a stranger in it. So I did what any deeply insulted, slightly unhinged, but still extremely composed person would do. I sat with it. I watched. I listened to the music start. I heard the cheers when they kissed. I saw the guests filter into the main hall for drinks and dinner. And I realized something. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not yell or argue or even ask why. Sometimes the power is in what you choose to do next. Because here's what no one remembered. I owned the venue. The garage. That was mine. The ballroom. The kitchen the caterer was using. And while they were dancing, while they were celebrating, I was getting real clear on something. If I was going to be treated like I didn't belong, then maybe they didn't either. That clarity didn't come from anger. It came from being forced to look at what I'd allowed. How often I'd let myself be pushed to the side, convinced that patience would earn me appreciation. Never does. Respect isn't earned by silence. It's commanded by self-respect. And that moment, me in that garage with a lukewarm lemonade and the faint sound of Beyoncé playing in the background, that was the turning point. Not because it broke me. 'Cause it woke me up. You don't sit someone in a garage by accident. You do it because somewhere along the way you forgot who they are. So I reminded them. You know what struck me the most after I got over the shock of sitting in that garage? It wasn't the insult. It wasn't the folding chair. It was what that chair represented. Because weddings aren't just about dresses and flowers and overpriced appetizers. At their core, weddings are about two families coming together. It's a ritual, tradition, a moment that says, we are doing this as a unit. It's about respect. It's about lineage. It's about acknowledging the people who made it possible for you to be standing there in a white dress, promising forever. But that's the thing about family, we assume it's automatic. We assume that just because we share blood or paperwork, we also share values. And let me tell you something I wish I'd understood sooner. You cannot assume respect comes with a role. It doesn't matter if you're the mother, the father, the uncle, the godparent. If people don't choose to honor you, your title means nothing. And that's exactly what I felt that day. Invisible, despite all I'd done, despite who I was to them. It hit me while I was standing there in that garage that somewhere along the way, we stopped teaching what these moments are supposed to mean. And I'm not just talking about etiquette, I'm talking about heart. I'm talking about the deeper why. Weddings used to be about honoring the people who raised you, supported you, stood beside you in your lowest moments. They were about lifting up the family as a whole, not just spotlighting two people in love. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for love. But real love doesn't ignore people. Real love doesn't diminish others just because the spotlight feels good. And maybe that's what's been lost. We spend so much time on the performance. The perfect photos, the Pinterest-worthy centerpieces, the first dance choreography, that we forget the foundation. We forget to look our people in the eye and say, thank you. See you. I know what you sacrificed for me to stand here today. You know what I would have given to hear that from my son or his bride. Just one moment where they looked around and said, we're here because people showed up for us. Because that's what family does. They show up. When it's hard. When it's messy. When no one else does. That's what I've done. That's what so many of us do, over and over again, quietly, without asking for recognition. But here's the truth. Even the strongest people need acknowledgement. Even the most giving hearts need to be seen. It's not about ego. It's about connection. It's about being part of something larger than yourself. And when you strip that away, when you reduce family to a guest list or a seating chart, you lose something sacred. I sat in that garage and thought about all the birthdays, all the school drop-offs, the hospital visits, the bills I helped cover, the phone calls in the middle of the night, the forgiveness I offered more than once. And yet, on the day that was supposed to be about family, I was parked out back like an afterthought. And it made me ask the harder question. Have we really taught this next generation what it means to honor family? Or have we taught them that image matters more than integrity? Because there is no wedding, no milestone, no celebration without the people who built you. Your family might not be perfect. They might be messy, complicated, stubborn. But they were there. And that counts. We need to do better. We need to raise people who don't just look good on the outside but who know how to see people on the inside. We need to raise people who know that gratitude isn't just a thank you card. It's how you treat people when no one's watching. And you want to know something else? Respect isn't about age. It's about effort. It's about the space you hold for the people who held space for you. That's what was missing that day. Not just for me, but for everyone who had quietly invested in those two standing at the altar. Family is supposed to be the roots, not the audience. So when I sat there, isolated in a place I helped build, I realized that they didn't just sit me in a garage. They missed the entire point of what this day was supposed to mean. And the part that stung the most. They thought that chair was harmless. But the message it sent, it was loud and clear. If you forget the people who made you, the celebration means nothing. You know what doesn't happen overnight? A wedding, marriage, venue, family, all of that. This takes years. Years of showing up when you're exhausted. Years of investing in things that don't always show a return right away. Years of pouring yourself into people and projects because you believe in them. And standing in that garage, what hit me wasn't just the sting of being sidelined. It was the weight of how much I had put in, and how quickly it had been dismissed. Because let me be clear, that venue didn't appear out of thin air. The chandeliers they were dancing under. Pick those out. The reclaimed wood for the bar. I hauled some of it myself. I helped fund it. Helped design it. Made calls, chased down permits. Walked through the muddy lot in boots when it was still a mess of gravel and dreams. That place didn't just host the wedding. It existed because of me. And that's not me bragging. That's just the truth. I've always believed that when you love people, you invest in what matters to them. You show up. You bring your skills, your time, your energy, your money, whatever you've got, to help them build something better. Not because you expect something in return, but because you care. Because that's what love does. But there's a difference between giving freely and being taken for granted. I had shown up for my son every step of the way. Not just for this venue, but through life. Through scraped knees and bad grades. Through heartbreaks and broken cars. Through the nights he called and didn't know what to do with his life. And I sat there, not with answers but with presence. Through the silent work of raising someone who believes they are capable, loved, and not alone. And I'm not saying I was perfect. Far from it. I've made my mistakes, said the wrong thing more than once, and probably showed up too much. But I showed up. Consistently. Quietly. Without keeping score. But here's what happens when you give like that for too long without boundaries. People stop noticing. They start assuming. They start believing that what you do is just part of the background noise. The lights always come on, the check always clears, the truck always shows up with extra chairs when the rental company messes up. They forget there's a person behind all of that. So when I walked into that garage and saw that folding chair with my name on it, it wasn't just about bad seating. It was about being erased. It was about looking around and realizing that everyone was benefiting from something I helped build, but no one had taken the time to ask if I was okay, or if I even felt like I belonged there anymore. And that's when it shifted for me. That's when I saw it clearly. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. I had been so focused on being the foundation that I never noticed they'd stopped inviting me into the house. You ever had that realization? That you've been essential to something that no longer makes space for you? Hurts. And you know what hurts even more? Knowing that you allowed it to get that far because you thought that if you just kept giving, one day they'd finally see you. One day they'd appreciate it. One day you'd be acknowledged for the weight you carried, the roots you planted, the fires you put out without anyone knowing. But one day never came. Until that day. While they were busy taking photos and giving speeches, I stood there thinking, they don't even know the stories these walls could tell. The late nights, the heated conversations, the moments I doubted if we could pull it off. All of it, my sweat, my worry, my hope, had become invisible, repackaged as something beautiful for them to enjoy. And still, I might have been okay with all of that if there had been a moment of acknowledgement. A glance. A word. A nod that said, *, we remember what you did. We know who you are to us. *. But there wasn't. So that garage chair. That was the story in a single image. I built the house, and they gave me a seat by the broomsticks. That's when I realized. I had a history that deserved a seat at the table. And if they wouldn't give it to me, maybe it was time I stopped asking. I stood there in that garage. Alone, out of sight, out of mind. And while I tried to wrap my head around what was happening, I could hear the music start to play. You know that moment during a wedding when the celebration finally kicks in? When the pressure of the ceremony is over and everyone lets loose on the dance floor. That's when it really hit me. While they were dancing, I was watching. Not just literally watching through the crack of that half-open service door, but watching something much bigger. Watching the pattern. Watching the dynamic. Watching how easy it was for people to celebrate on top of someone else's silence. It was like I was a ghost in a story I helped write. Everyone else was laughing, clinking glasses, taking selfies. The music thumped through the walls like a reminder. You're not in there, not today. Not in this moment. And it was wild because nobody missed me. Not one person came looking. Not one person popped in to say, "Hey, why are you back here?" And you'd think that maybe someone would notice. You'd think someone would at least say, "Shouldn't she be inside?" But no one did. And that silence, that was louder than any bass drop. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about me being put in the garage. It was about everyone being totally fine with me staying there. I watched my son glide across the dance floor. I watched the new bride laughing with her friends, tossing her head back like nothing in the world could touch her. And for a split second I wanted to be happy for them. I wanted to feel what they were feeling. But instead I felt something else rise up in me. Not bitterness, not anger, but a deep, sharp clarity. I had been left behind not by accident but because somewhere along the way I became so reliable, so consistent, so invisible in my giving, that they stopped seeing me altogether. Let me say that again. When people get used to you always being the one who shows up, they stop noticing that you're even there. And that realization, that was devastating. Because I had believed, like a lot of us do, that if you give enough, stay long enough, support hard enough, they'll remember. That one day, all that effort, all that love would come back in the form of appreciation, inclusion, a seat, literally and figuratively, at the table. But what I saw from that garage was that they were comfortable. Comfortable building joy on top of my silence. Comfortable celebrating while I was sidelined. Comfortable dancing, not just in that moment, but in a larger pattern of disconnection. And here's the truth. Comfort can be dangerous. When people are comfortable with disrespect, they don't even realize they're doing it. They'll toast right over your sacrifice. They'll slide right past the history you gave them. They'll smile for the camera while you're sitting in a folding chair next to the recycling bin. And we let it happen. We let it happen because we tell ourselves it's not worth ruining the moment. We shrink ourselves to protect someone else's comfort. But while they were dancing, I stopped doing that. I stopped trying to make excuses for behavior that was clearly telling me where I stood. I stopped rewriting the story in my head to make it less painful. I stopped pretending it was okay. And you know what's powerful? That moment where you finally realize you don't need to explain yourself to anyone. You just need to see the truth. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't mad. I was done. And in that quiet moment, the music thumping in the background, I made a decision. Not just about that day, but about every day after. I wasn't going to sit quietly in rooms I built. I wasn't going to keep handing out pieces of myself to people who didn't even know I was missing. While they were dancing, I stopped hoping they'd notice. And I started noticing myself. You know those moments where something in you just clicks? Where all the waiting, the hoping, the forgiving, the trying, you just drop it like a weight you didn't even realize you'd been carrying. That's exactly what happened to me in that garage. I had spent years contributing to that venue. Financing it, helping plan it, pouring time and energy into building something beautiful. Not just for my son's wedding, but for the future. For legacy. For family. I thought I was building something with them. Turns out I was just building something for them. And when the moment came, I wasn't even given a place in the picture. So while they were spinning on the dance floor under lights I paid for, to music echoing through speakers I'd installed, I wasn't plotting revenge. I was having a revelation. There's a huge difference. I realized that I didn't need to fight to be seen. I didn't need to raise my voice or storm into the room and make a dramatic scene. The power wasn't in yelling. It was in walking away with my dignity intact. And more importantly, it was in recognizing what I actually owned. They forgot something pretty important in all the excitement. That venue. That place where they were laughing and drinking and tossing the bouquet like we were in a movie. Owned it. Legally. Financially. Structurally. That barn they turned into a Pinterest fantasy. The grounds where the guests were taking photos with vintage lanterns and perfectly placed hay bales. Still mine. And I thought, asterisk. I'm sitting in the garage of a building I own. How poetic. Because what do you do when you've been pushed out of your own creation? What do you do when you've built the dream, and they hand you a folding chair in the utility closet? You take your power back. Quietly. Decisively. With no need to explain yourself. See, when people treat you like an afterthought, it's easy to spiral into self-doubt. You start questioning whether you're being too sensitive. Whether you're expecting too much. But the truth is, there's a line between humility and self-erasure. And I had crossed it years ago without even realizing it. But sitting in that garage I found the line again. And I made a choice. I sold the venue. Not in a fit of rage. Not to make a scene. I sold it because it was mine to sell, and I had finally accepted the truth. I had built something for people who didn't value me. And I was done offering up my labor, my money, and my love to people who saw it as a convenience, not a contribution. Let me tell you something. You are allowed to change your mind when you realize people only love the parts of you that benefit them. I walked out of that wedding and made a few calls. No drama. No announcement. Just action. The kind of action that comes from deep clarity, not emotion. Because when you hit that point, you don't want payback. You want peace. Selling that venue wasn't about them. It was about me finally seeing what I had allowed. It was about realizing that my worth doesn't come from what I give to other people. It comes from how I choose to stand up for myself. And if I don't protect that, no one else will. We all have that moment eventually. That moment where we're watching everyone else celebrate while we're sitting on the sidelines, wondering how we ended up outside our own story. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to stay there. You can take the pen back. You can change the story. Selling the venue was me choosing to stop enabling a version of family that only saw me when it was convenient. They danced, sang, they celebrated, let go. They had no idea what was happening. And I didn't need them to. Because the most powerful moves you'll ever make, they're not the ones you announce. They're the ones you decide. Quietly, completely, unapologetically. And while they were raising their glasses, I was raising my standards. You want to know the funniest thing about life? Sometimes the most freeing moments are the ones that look from the outside like total chaos, like a loss, like something went terribly wrong. But from the inside, it's the first deep breath you've taken in years. That's what it felt like after I sold the venue. I didn't tell anyone right away. I didn't need to. The truth had already done what it needed to do. I wasn't seeking a reaction. I was standing in a decision. And what surprised me most wasn't how people responded after the fact. It was how I responded. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel panic. I didn't even feel vindicated. Felt clear. For the first time in a long time, I was out of the cycle of overgiving, over-explaining, over-functioning. I had always thought that love was about sacrifice. Give more, show up more, prove your value over and over until someone finally reflects it back to you. But that day, sitting in that garage, then later signing those papers, I realized something. Love isn't about proving your place. It's about knowing it. And once you know your worth, really know it, the need to force anything just disappears. I didn't need the venue anymore. Not because it wasn't beautiful or successful or filled with memories, but because I finally accepted that the thing I was trying to hold together wasn't real. It was a version of family that only worked as long as I stayed quiet. But I wasn't quiet anymore. I had spent too many years editing myself for people who wouldn't do the same. And the truth is, when you start living from that place, when you choose to stop performing, stop placating, stop begging for decency, you don't just free yourself. You start attracting different people. People who don't need the backstory to treat you with respect. I've had people ask me, "Don't you regret it? Don't you wish you had handled it differently?" And sure, the old me would have replayed it over and over in my head, wondering if I'd gone too far. But here's the thing. The moment you stop apologizing for having a boundary, you stop regretting the fallout it creates. I didn't ruin anything. I revealed it. I revealed what happens when you stop accommodating people's comfort at the cost of your own. I revealed what it looks like when someone finally says, "Enough." And you know what? That's not destruction. That's truth. Now, I don't share this story to tell you that the answer is always to walk away or to sell the thing you helped build. That's not the point. This isn't about property. It's about ownership. Of your life, your voice, your worth. There is a moment, and you'll know it when it comes, when you realize that staying in certain dynamics doesn't make you loyal. It makes you unavailable to yourself. And I had been unavailable to myself for too long. So no, I don't regret it. I've watched people learn things the hard way since then. I've seen the awkward silences, the shifting of blame, the half-hearted attempts to reel me back in without ever saying the words that really mattered. We saw what we did. And we're sorry. But I'm not waiting for that apology anymore. Because I didn't need closure from them. I gave it to myself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop knocking on the door of people who never really wanted you inside. And when I let go of that venue, I wasn't just closing a chapter. I was choosing myself. Maybe for the first time. I was saying, this is enough. I'm enough. And if I have to choose between being accepted by people who benefit from me staying small or standing alone in my truth, I will choose the truth every single time. I thought I was going to that wedding to celebrate a union. Instead, I walked away with a divorce, from the idea that love and sacrifice are the same thing. From the belief that family is allowed to treat you however they want just because you share a name. And in that clarity, I found something I never expected to feel again. Not pride. Not revenge. Is real solid unshakable peace. And that's what happens when you stop waiting to be invited in and start walking through life like you belong, because you do.